Matt from the Random Maker here, and today we are going to be doing what I would consider, if you're getting into finer woodworking, I don't even want to use the word finer. If you're getting into woodworking outside, like using more machines and intricate things, this is, in my hands right here, one of the first projects you should do, and that is a very simple cutting board. Why would a cutting board be a great first project when it comes to learning woodworking? It's very easy. It forces you to square material to make it join very, very closely so that you don't have obvious lines, and so it looks nice. It's easy to practice on a nice small cutting board, where on bigger projects it becomes harder and harder to use. So I'm a big fan of using the cutting board as one of your first projects. So how about this? Let's get making. Let's actually get going to how this project is going to work. So number one here, we have some oak, cherry, and the cherry, as you can see, is a lot nicer shape. It was actually cut off an old project. Actually, all this stuff is prior to the Random Maker. I'm a little bit of a, when it comes to hardwoods, anything over 12 inches, I have a hard time throwing it away because it's so expensive. This material is already four-sided. It's already nice. I bought it pre-processed, so whoop. This stuff, on the other hand, was off some old rough cut oak, and I'm not looking forward to this. Oak is a nightmare to work with because guess why? It's hard. We're gonna be processing this down and making it nice. Let's switch over to the machinery. Let's get going. One of the big things with when you're using the jointer here is slow and steady. You always wanna make sure you have even pressure, and always make sure your blades are sharp, plan it out, use your references. Okay, so you can see here, I'm just facing my pieces of wood so that we have a flat reference face to work with. And then as soon as we've got that face done, then we'll move on to the next step, which will be using the edge. Okay, you can see now we have moved in the fence. The whole point of this is so that you're exposing the least amount of blade as possible. And as you can see here, I'm gonna take the side that I just planed the face of, and I'm gonna put it up against the edge there and give myself a edge that is nice and straight. So that'll give me two reference edges. You can see I pulled the pencil out and wrote R on there after. So yeah, that's about it. We're going to do this face and edge all the pieces to make sure we have a bunch of nice wood to work with, as we're going to do a lot more for it later, but that's about it. Not that hard. Okay, now all I'm doing here is I'm planing the wood. And one of the big things with cutting boards is, generally speaking, they're about 3/4 of an inch thick. In this case, because I'm going to be cutting up all these pieces, I'm actually going to just plane them enough so that they're all just flat at the same height. You can see some of these pieces I'm actually just pulling through very quickly, and that is just to make sure, this planer I have is not heavy duty. This is oak. And so I want to take as small pass as possible, so I'm just running because the pieces are pretty close to the same size, so I'm just running through to make sure we don't have a high corner and cause any problems. So I'm also throwing the cherry through because I just want everything to be that even, because it'll make my life easier down the road. But I'm only going to plane it to until it's just flat wood. Then I'm going to run it on the table saw to run the pieces through to get the other edge, so it's that easy. Alright, let's move on to the next machine. Okay, so at this point, all I'm doing is just cutting 1-inch strips off the wood, and so that's it. It's just table sawing, cutting 1-inch strips of all the wood we planed, and making sure my reference sides are against the fences in the table, so that we have nice square wood. Alright, let's actually move on to the next step. At this point, you can see here we have all our pieces, and I like to lay it out before I pull out clamps and stuff. I like to take a few minutes and just plan my pattern and make it look nice. The other thing you want to keep in mind is all the wood, if you think, has a grain pattern in one direction, okay? And if you think of it as a U shape, you want to have it so that the U's are alternating. So if you have all of them in the same direction, okay, exaggeration, but it can start to form up into a bowl. So by having it in counter, they kind of balance themselves out. What I'm going to do here now is I am just going to plan it out, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the ends and just start flipping. What I do like to do, just because of how it works, is I take a pencil and I figure out the direction, and once I have that, I just start alternating. Just like
that. That's about it. Ready to move on to the clamp. What I've done now is I've transferred all my pieces of wood onto my clamps. I've actually removed I cut a couple extra because it's not fitting nice, because wood is constantly moving. Now, when you cut your pieces on the table saw, you can have the chance of releasing pressure, and some of them can start to bow a little bit. I am going to dry fit these, so I've kept the pattern, so you know I've got my grain direction going in opposite with every piece. Now, I don't want to over tighten. What can happen if you over tighten, the pieces can start to bow, and that is one reason I have a third clamp over here that, as we can see here, when I actually glue it, I'm going to clamp this down, and we can see here that it's actually quite level. I don't have to do much here. I did a good job on the squaring, so there's not any imperfections here that I have to pick. You really don't want to. Sometimes just, you can actually fix it by switching wood back and forth. That's about it. Just make it so it looks nice. Make sure your ends are level, and yeah, let's talk about glue. One of the biggest mistakes a lot of people especially are gonna make is they just use regular old wood glue. You have to use type 3, food safe are the 2 requirements. And yeah, I can't lie, I usually just use those types of glues anyway. It's easier to have one big bottle of glue than it is a bunch of smaller ones. Another thing you can notice here, I have a piece of plastic underneath. The glue is going to drip because I'm going to press on here enough that the glue is going to come out. Instead of having to be super clean and clean up, I just put a drop cloth, piece of plastic underneath, and that's about it. We're lucky here, I've got no other projects today, so I'm going to glue it, set it, leave it. I don't know how long, but probably overnight at least, and it's super hot in here, so it's gonna dry fast. Yeah, not much out to gluing. I'm gonna film the process.
All right, you can see here, I'm just getting both sides of each piece of wood and spreading it out, and one piece at a time, every second piece. Don't overclamp the type.
So, I want to plane it. I have to watch which side because I don't want to take too much off one side or another, or else it'll look really goofy. So what I'm going to do is put it on the table, see which side is. Basically, we want the U facing down because we'll plane one side, then flip it, get the other. But before I do that, just to give the planer blades a healthier, easier time, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take off all the little nicks or bubbles of glue.
Okay, so at this point, all you want to do is actually just sand off all of those glue. Now this step, depending on how much you love your planer, is kind of necessary or unnecessary. I hate changing blades, so I just sand it a little bit. This is just rough sand, and because I'm getting ready to throw it through my planer. Okay, so this is a step that if you do a really good job sanding, you can avoid. As you can see here, I sanded it till the top, and I just carefully put it through the planer once. Or twice, and basically that's it. It just gives it a nice flat edge, and I'm gonna do both sides because I want to make sure it's nice and pretty. Okay, so pretty simple. I'm just gonna take it to the table saw and get the final shape. That's it. I don't think I need to go any further. Yeah, let's move on.
I have got the material cut square. Couple things. You got to put a handle in, and how we're going to do that is we're going to take 2 holes, drill them in, and then take a jigsaw. You can use a chop saw. You don't have to put a handle in. I like a handle, and I'm going to drill 2 holes and then just connect the dot. Okay. Now, one thing that is fair to say is, well, because of the way the grain goes, it might break. I'm like, in theory, okay. But we're not putting any weight on. Long story short, it's a handle. It's not structurally strong, so I've never seen one in break that isn't super thin. The other thing is we are gonna be, I like rounded corners. So one of the best tricks I can give you for rounded corners is get an old lid or something in the corner you like, and all you have to do is put the corner until it lines up with both sides, and then just follow that. And that's gonna give me a pattern for our nice rounded corners, okay? In the end, you're gonna have to hand sand it anyway to make it the final. Next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna draw a line across the board. And one thing is, yes, I'm putting pencils on the nice new surface. We're gonna have to sand this to bejesus anyway. I'm just gonna take this small level and I'm gonna draw a straight line through. Now, the reason for this is simple. If you try and measure, even if you're good, I've just found with beginners, it's better just have one straight line so at least the handle looks level. Next thing, I'm gonna pick out, so this cutting board is now 10 inches total. So I know 5 is my middle. And I'm gonna go 1.5 inches on each side for my drill. That might seem small, but don't forget that's the drill points. And the handle is just to hang up, grab, so it's not a big deal. So yeah, well.
Okay, here you can see I just took a jigsaw and cut the corners off. Pretty easy. And the big thing is I took a sander in and did the final touch because I am not perfect with the jigsaw, so this gave it perfect. Then I took a sander, gave it a nice little sand down. Now, here's one thing. I broke one of the jigsaw blades. I did not feel like running to grab one, so instead, I just used a router to do the handle. You could use a jigsaw because I have drilled the holes, so not a big deal at that. Now I am going to take the router to round the ends, corners over, and you want to do basically the ends first and then do the sides, because with the ends you can have a little bit of a blow off, and usually it's on the corner, so the sides will hide any of that. And yeah, just pretty soon. I used a trace router and that's it.
Now we have used a router and routed all this corners off. That's the big shaping. Now, unfortunately, it's my most hated part. Sanding. Now, because we planed this nicely, it's not gonna need a whole lot of sanding, but it's still a good idea to do a very good sand. I'm actually going to lay down a protective layer here because this table's rough, and once we get down to a certain, once you're sanding, it can start scratching it up. So I'm gonna pull out this, and all this is an old cut-off drafting board thing, but what is it? And this is probably not the best for it, but what it is, soft surface, grippy, works really well for me. And as we can see now, we have a flat cutting board, so I'm gonna start sanding. Enjoy.
So here I am, as you can see, just sanding away. There's nothing special here. It's just you want to basically do a good job. The more sanding you do, the better it's gonna look. And if you can use power tools, I personally recommend it. When it comes to the edges, I always go by hand because it'll be too flat. So by basically cupping it in my hand, I can make it more round and follow the profile of the wood. And yeah, that's pretty much how this works. Nice and easy.
All right, so now that we are done sanding, this is really nice. Now, I only went to 220, and that's with woodworking. You should only go that far because, in all honesty, as soon as you go further and further, wood is still gonna move. And wood does da-da-da-da. And if you go too far with wood, you can actually get the particles so fine, you can actually clog the pores in the grain. Oh, it's really hot. Stupid heat wave while I'm filming this. There are many different ways to finish a cutting board. My preferred method is the simplest. I like mineral oil. Now, I buy specific like mineral oil for cutting blocks and stuff. There is a few things in there to help. You can just use regular mineral oil that is food grade. Make sure food grade, food safe. That's the biggest thing. Food grade, food safe, mineral oil. The reason I like mineral oil, it's idiot proof. You can use beeswax, you can use different types of waxes, products, as long as it says food safe and it's designed for, it doesn't have to say cutting board, but it has to be food safe. You want something that penetrates into the pores because as you're chopping, you're gonna kind of chop that top layer, so you want it to penetrate deep in. And another reason I like mineral oil is it's idiot proof. You pour it on, let it soak, wipe it off. Pour it on, let it soak, wipe it off. It's not a hard process, so we're gonna get doing that. Normally I would not finish on my sanding surface, but because this is a food safe product that'll wipe off, I'll let it go. You can use a rag, just use paper towel. Rags are probably better. It's easier for me to keep paper towel out here. And I'm not wiping off, I'm just spreading it around. All I want right now is I just want it to soak in, okay? I am not gonna do too much to it. I'm gonna get the edges started. And that's about it here. I'm actually gonna add more already because I This first round especially, another thing is you can wear gloves. It's food safe, it's just an oil. I'm not too worried about it. As long as your hands are clean, mine are, because this is the only thing I've been working on today is this cutting board. The nice thing about this process is it's not as sensitive to get a little dust on it because all we're doing is soaking oil in. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take a wooden block, you can use other stuff, and I'm just gonna kind of like move it around a bit because I don't want to use paper towel to soak up a lot of the oil. And I want it spread out nice and evenly so the wood will soak this up. All right, so I'm gonna leave this for a bit, let the oil soak up everything. And then what we're gonna do is, once it's soaked up, I'm gonna let it dry. So yeah, I'm gonna let it dry, let it soak up, and then we're gonna do the other side. And then like each side, the way I do the edges, because the edges in theory aren't gonna take as much damage. I just kind of like you saw me there, use the paper towel on the edges. And then one thing I tend to do, I don't know if it helps or not, it was an old timer once told me, if you do swirl patterns around with your cloth or whatever, you kind of pushing the oil around, push it deeper into the pores. I actually don't know if this is true, but you're just kind of rubbing the oil into the pores. I don't know if it's good or not, but in this case, I'll let you be the judge, to be honest. Tell me if you in the comments below if you actually know if this is right or not. Is this one of those myths I've been doing for years, or is it actually doing something? The only thing I can see it doing is it does even out the oil. So, all right, I'm gonna give the edges one more little coat, and I'm gonna let this dry. So it's super hot out here, it won't take long. Well, that's about it. As you can see here, as advertised, voila! It is a very gorgeous cutting board. All right, so you know the drill. If you like this video, do us a favor, hit the like button. If you want to see more content from the Random Maker, we're kind of in a summer lull right now. Heat wave is kind of killing us we have no air conditioning in the shops. So we've taken a small little break from everybody and we've been using stuff I've recorded in the past. If you have any projects you want to see, and we're not just talking woodworking, we can do metalworking, we can do 3D printing, electronics. We have a variety of talents. If there's a project you really want to see done, or even if you want to challenge me, bring it on. Well, okay, maybe that was a bad word, but you know what? Let's go with it. Okay, how I like to end every single one of these. It's Matt from the Random Maker. Until next time, let's get making.